getting a recording of what people are dreaming about, I think that would be the most incredible advancement that we can make. I'm always going to be pro AI.
I think it's important to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to the future of artificial intelligence and technology, especially within the dream space. Today, I'm talking to my friend Brandon, also known as Curious Box on Discord. He is one of my co-founders for the Lucid Dream Initiative, a startup nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching and spreading awareness about lucid dreaming. Brandon is also the head of our youth advisory board because at only 16 years old, he has accomplished so much and really made a name for himself in the community. So please welcome Brandon.
So good day, I'm Brandon. Some of you might know me better as Curious Box of the Lucid Dreaming community, but apart from that, it's almost incredible to be here today on the Dream World podcast with Amina to dive into this world that seems that she's cultivated for several years. At the moment, I'm just 16, I found myself almost immersed entirely in this new environment with both the scientific side of lucid dreams as well as the more experiential part of it, the more personal part of it. So the first time I discovered lucid dreaming, that was really, really long ago. I did have a natural lucid dream all the way back when I was 7, but I didn't realize it at the time. I'd had this most wondrous experience all the way back at my school when I remember coming back into the car, and in the dream I was crying, and I was telling my parents a little bit about the fact that I love the experience, but I'm in a dream and it isn't real. And what I find so ironic about that is there was so much untapped potential as to what that lucid dream could have been. Because I knew in that situation that I really was dreaming, but at the same time, I didn't know of the real potential charge that could have. So a couple years went by, just past this experience, until I rediscovered it again around COVID. It was late 2020. And at least now, if I were to talk about it, you could say it's a simple hobby, but to me, it's more of a form of passion that kind of shapes my vision for the future. There's so many ways that it fits into in my life that I never thought I could ever fathom. So it's that type of experience that I'd love to share with others.
So how did you find out about it again? What was that process like of oh, this is a thing. I've had a lucid dream. And what did you do once you rediscovered it?
I mean, the second time I must have been around 12 or 13 when I did have a second dream in which I could control what was around me. And I decided to search up on the internet, what does it really mean? I'm aware it's a dream, so I just searched up controlling your dreams, which isn't necessarily lucid dreaming, but it's an aspect of it. And once I got into that, I saw so much incredible content on something that has been studied for several decades at this point. And I signed up for a couple of courses, as well as looked at some videos on the topic. And it's after that, after looking through all those techniques that I first started to induce it. So it was that eureka moment, right? That opened my eyes to a whole new world of possibilities.
I had my first lucid dream as a child as well, around 7 or 8 years old. So I can relate to that. Do you feel like it was easy for you once you started trying to induce it to pick it back up? How long did it take you?
It took a couple months until that happened, but I started as always with the journaling process of some dreams that I'm first able to remember, but not necessarily be lucid in. The funny thing is, my first 2 lucid dreams, I was aware for just a moment, and then I was woken up by one of my parents or an alarm, just getting ready for school. So it's kind of funny when that happens. But if I were to talk about the first lucid dream where I truly was able to control myself and the world around me, I remember this so vividly, and I have it journaled all the way back on some of my first dreams. So I was in my house and I was petting my dog. It was my pet Pearl, who unfortunately passed away a couple months back. And in that moment, I remember realizing that, hey, there's something off here. There's something that doesn't seem right about the environment. And then from that point, I basically ran outside. It took up and I started flying, and it was one of the most incredible experiences. And from that point, my frequency of lucid dreaming every single night started to increase, and I started to use it in a lot more experimental ways that are far beyond anything I'd ever read about.
I love that. What type of things do you like to do while lucid? What type of experiments did you do? Is there something specific that you would like to try or?
My favorite thing to do, at least at the moment, is speech. And I use that in a very special way. After I'd heard that you can practice real life skills in a lucid dream, right? They sometimes say that doing mental practice is 70% of that real practice. So whenever I have a presentation to do, whether it's for school or in a course or anything else that I'd like to discuss, I just set myself on a massive stage. And it doesn't matter how many thousands of people there are, but I'm in that environment. I try to simulate that environment in the best way possible. And in that sense, what I've been able to do is create it in such an incredible format, such that when I really do the presentation, it feels the same way, and I'm comfortable in the same way that I was in the dream.
That's incredible. Do you find that you're able to stay in the dream long enough to fully rehearse the entire thing?
Sometimes I do have to end up breaking it up, but most of the time I do stay in the dream for just as long as I need to, and then oftentimes I even have a little bit more time to do something different, because lucid dreams can be used for so many different parts of our lives. And the second thing that I'd love to talk a little bit about is the fact that dreams are like a sandbox, right? It's not only the fact that you can do anything with the environment or yourself around you, but from a perspective of self-improvement and identity, I've seen that lucid dreams can also be incredible in that sense. I know some pioneers love to study and practice the idea of dream yoga, and that's something that I've slowly started to get myself into.
How have you felt that your lucid dreams have changed you so far? Do you feel like you've had self improvement because of them?
I don't want to make any mistakes on correlation causation, but I think overall there definitely has been an uptrend with the way that I approach things. Specifically, if I like one thing I'd love to work on, and I already have been for a while, is interactions between certain people, meeting myself and others for the first time. And when it comes to that, if I'm able to rehearse the experience with dream characters, when it happens in real life, it just isn't as awkward anymore. It isn't a first, because I'd already experienced it once in the dream, and that's the special part about that. It's just a possibility that you can practice, but you don't have any real implications on the world around you.
Yeah, it's honestly really great. I love using lucid dreams to practice things beforehand. It always helps, it helps me prepare and not be so anxious. So that's great. I think it's really fascinating that you're so young and you're really deep into the community and you're a part of all these lucid dreaming projects. How did you get involved in like meeting other people and like finding other lucid dreamers?
The first time I'd gotten into lucid dreaming, I did this one presentation for my school. It was an informative speech, and there were a ton of people who did speeches on things like time travel or the applications of the golden lens of history. But I decided to do the informative speech on lucid dreaming, and obviously that led me to do a lot more research about the best books as well as the best communities that I could go to for that. And I'm sure at this point, every lucid dreamer has come across Stephen LaBerge's Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming. And once I read that, I have to say, going through each of those pages, it was kind of wondrous to see how many parallels there were between what I was thinking and what was written down. Everything from the awareness aspect of your intent, together with stabilization and control and whatnot. But there were so many connections between what I thought of personally and what was written in that book. And besides that, getting into the community, I did end up joining Dream Cafe, and that was followed by Night Owl contacting me and getting me into this experiment. And that's how I ended up getting into the Lucid Dream initiative.
And for anybody wanting to check out the Lucid Dream Initiative, I'll include all the links below so we can, get some more signups, some really exciting things we have going on. So, Brandon, like you have your whole life ahead of you, all the possibilities in the world. What are your plans for, like, your goals in life, your career? What do you want to study? And is lucid dreaming going to be a part of that academic future for you?
It's always been very tricky when somebody asks me, well, what is your major going to be, or what are you truly passionate about? Because I've been very, very passionate and involved in a variety of different things, whether it's travel to like world history, science, or even linguistics. But I do have to say, after that 1 year I did in biology during high school, I started to delve in a little bit into neuroscience, followed by sleep science. And that's where I started to discover some of the science of how dreams and lucid dreaming works. So that's the first front of it. That's what I end up being pretty passionate about consistently. And besides that, when continuing with the rest of what my opportunities can be, as you said, it's a world waiting for me. It's full of potential that is yet to be discovered. So apart from what I've already considered, I definitely plan to continue lucid dreaming as at least some part of my journey. And no matter what I do, it's definitely going to be integrated into that, whether I'm going to be helping others with doing so or just sharing it on a far smaller scale.
I love that. I'm really excited for you and just to see where it takes you because, lucid dreaming it's a lifelong journey. So I'm excited to see where it takes you and how it interweaves with your life.
There's this particular exercise that when you first open exploring the world that you end up doing. And it's something that's so simple, but it's something that's also so profound. When I usually tell somebody else about lucid dreaming, their first question is always, well, why would I want to do this? I don't want to ruin my regular dreams or whatever it is. But as Stephen LaBerge would always say, if you haven't had a lucid dream yet, you may find it difficult to imagine what it's really like. And I always like talking about consciousness and awareness in the context of lucid dreaming, right? I say expand your consciousness, expand your awareness. So basically, to exercise that present state of consciousness, he basically walks through all of the different senses and visualizing that. And the first time that people usually hear and really experience what a lucid dream at least really is like, I think that's the magic of it. When somebody tells me that they've had this for the first time and it's an experience that you can only get by being in it. I can take ages to try to explain what it's about, but the experience is a different part of it. And that's after I did all of those presentations on one for my course on presentation and platform skills. I talked about the experience of lucid dreaming and how it increases your awareness, basically doubling your capacity and potential, using that third of our life that seems like just rest, but is packed with this full potential, the idea that anybody can do it. And besides that, you're able to use it for so many other things, connecting with almost the power of the mind.
Yeah, I love how passionate you are about the topic, and I'm right there with you. I think it's something that everybody should experience, and it's so hard to explain to people who've never had a lucid dream. I'm always just like, no, trust me, you're gonna love it. It's interesting as well because academically, there's starting to be a lot more research now on lucid dreams. But when it comes to consciousness in general, like it's not very well understood. What fascinates you the most about like the nature of consciousness and the dream space? Like, do you feel like there's more out there that we just don't understand?
Yeah, it's an incredibly tricky question because it's not something that we have concrete evidence or about. It's not something that's very empirical. So we always talk about, at least I've heard a lot of hypnotists make the division between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And the dream state, we often talk about the fact that when we're in a dream, we are dreaming and we can control some of the things in a lucid dream. But at the same time, there are so many things that we're not controlling. I know Charlie Morley likes to call that the dreamer, right? The fact that the world around us, while we are witnessing it, is still being created by the unconscious mind. And within that, I know a lot of different cultures have been able to tap into the power of it, but my favorite example of the mystery of the unconscious is something like a premonition dream, a dream that you've dreamt about something and it predicts some part of your life in the future. Somehow it seems like there's almost a hidden aspect to what you're dreaming about. The fact that there's been some information that maybe your brain has worked on or that you've recalled, your conscious might not necessarily know about, but your unconscious does. Sigmund Freud sometimes talked about the fact that maybe our dreams are trying to inform us about something that only our unconscious is aware about. And sometimes in Buddhism, you might even say that some of your past lives might have memories, and those memories are stored by the unconscious, but not necessarily the conscious. But we can go down a massive rabbit hole of the different ways that our unconscious is so much more of a mystery to us than our conscious.
very mind-boggling, and there's a lot of conflicting opinions, understandably, because, not everybody, some people are more scientific, some people are more spiritual. Where do you stand on that spectrum? I mean, you mentioned like past lives and things like that. So where do you stand on that?
I always bring up all of the different ideas from every culture and every opinion on the ways that some of these can work. I love to accept all of them, or at least bring onto the table all of those as an opportunity of something that could be, but we can't necessarily prove. I would say that we should separate the empirical side of anything to the religious, spiritual, or practical side of things, simply because I would say that two completely different ideas that are connected by one particular subject, but don't necessarily intermix. So I'm open to any idea that can be put on the table, but I don't necessarily believe in any particular one.
That's a very smart answer. I think scientific knowledge is one type of knowledge, and then spiritual knowledge is other type of knowledge that doesn't necessarily always overlap, because science can only explain things that are able to be replicated with facts and evidence. And lucid dreaming is such a hard thing to study sometimes, especially in in a lab setting. And things like past lives and premonition dreams are even more difficult to study.
There is so much at the forefront of technology when it comes to lucid dreaming, and we always talk about the fact that it is a pretty understudied field if you compare it to general neuroscience or even some other parts of social science. So when it comes to lucid dreaming and dreaming in particular, I've always heard these stories of how it was initially discovered. Like, for example, we at least now know that our eyes in real life during REM match those of which in lucid dreams, because there was this one person who was dreaming about a tennis match, and they could see their eyes on the EEG, as well as the eye tracker going back and forth and back and forth. And suddenly we realized something magical about that. And we discovered REM in an incredible way too. So as it comes to new research being done on this topic, I think the big dream with lucid dreaming research and dream research in general is to be able to convert our brain waves, or however is necessary, into a real picture. What if we could peer through those dreams of people who are sleeping? And obviously there is a lack of complete concrete solid information. What you're going to be seeing in the dream is not exactly what we can reproduce. But as we're jumping into the forefront of AI, I can see how large language models and diffusion models would be able to fill in for some of that information too. So if anything, knowing, or at least getting a recording of what people are dreaming about, I think that would be the most incredible advancement that we can make.
That would be so amazing. I mean, just the idea of that is so exciting to me, and also a little bit scary. I mean, I think it'd be great for research purposes, and even for personal dream journaling purposes. There's a lot of interesting ways that technology is starting to get involved with lucid dreaming. There's a lot of new devices and things that are being created. And you mentioned AI, which is also very fascinating. So I'm excited to see where that goes when incorporating technology into dream research. Do you feel like it's going to be a positive thing, or do you feel like there are some cons to that?
I'm always going to be pro AI, since the technologies that we have available to us can always help us in a positive way. While I'm going to respect those who might not necessarily want to integrate it into that, I feel like it's the same question as with spiritual or empirical. If we have the tools available to us, and if we're rapidly developing this technology, I'm always sitting there like, why not use it? It's something that, as long as we know it's being used, as long as it's controlled as a variable in whatever experiment that we're doing, I'm all for advancing technology, especially in the field of lucid dream research.
We're evolving as a species, and I think that this is part of that, and we're just on the brink of like a new phase of our evolution. And who knows, I mean, even if hundreds of years from now we become half robots or whatever, I think that's just kind of how it's destined to be. Like, we're eventually evolving and discovering technology and becoming more connected with it. So I think it's inevitable. And I think, like you said, it's important to just use it to advance our knowledge on, reality and dreams and consciousness.
We could go across some of the health side of lucid dreaming, specifically the fact that I've seen it used to treat a lot of different. I mean, it depends. We start simply with nightmares, but it could move on to something that's a little bit more complicated, like trauma integration. The power of that is also another part of lucid dreaming that is very understudied, simply because we don't know of that many people who have completely used it to the best of their abilities. We have a lot of anecdotes and opinions on specific people, but not necessarily that at a large scale. And the example that I always see given on the fact that the mind can influence the body is a placebo. If your mind is able to treat you in a way that is almost identical or even better than some sort of real treatment, then what do you think the power of a lucid dream as an extension of that could be on the mind-body connection?
Yeah, that's true. That always fascinates me because it just shows the power of the mind, and doing that consciously from within a lucid dream can yield some incredible results. I mean, I've also talked to a lot of people who have been able to heal physical ailments through working inside their lucid dreams. And, yeah, there are stories and anecdotes, but I mean, it's real. It happens, and that's undeniable.
If lucid dreaming as a practice is able to become really widespread, maybe researchers might start taking a note of it and might start seeing the impact of it. But I think it will just take time, like everything. Everything that is currently studied in the field has taken time to develop as a true science. And I think we're on the edge of that when coming to lucid dreaming. So as the more that we start to expand our spread in this field, the more research we're going to end up seeing too.
People like me and you that are, in the community talking about it, just like being so excited about it. It's really just going to start to, gain interest across the world. And, one person at a time that we can convert, so to speak, to become a lucid dreamer. I think that's just going to, slowly start to advance more and more. I mean, there's already a lot of research on it. Surprisingly, people just don't really know about it that much from what I've found.
But even if like the term lucid dreaming is a pretty new term, we've been using this idea that dreams are special for such a long time. I always love to talk about ancient Egypt in this particular setting, and because they had dream temples and they use those as environments of pure healing and rejuvenation. So when a patient would fall into that trance-like state, they would use dreams as essential to determine the treatment of that illness. So in those temples, some sort of lucid dreaming took place.
Oh, for sure. Ancient Egyptians used to use dream work a lot, lucid dreaming specifically. Also in Asia, like, Tibetan Buddhists had an entire, you mentioned dream yoga earlier. They have entire schools dedicated to this. What do you think it is about? I don't know if it's Western culture or just modern culture. Why do you think we've kind of separated a bit from this knowledge of dreams that we used to have in the ancient times?
Especially during the scientific revolution, empiricism started to become almost the accepted way, at least in the West. It became the accepted way of teaching and proving things. It's the difference between Einstein proving his theory of relativity and Sigmund Freud talking about archetypes and dreams on that front. I think I would say it went out of fashion, but because it's one of those things that is a lot more mystical and a lot more mysterious in comparison to our hard sciences. But at the same time, I feel like we shouldn't stray away from what we don't know about. And the fact that lucid dreams are mystical might have had it swept under the rug by that very 17th century scientific revolution idea of thinking. So over time, it's been a lot less reported in comparison to the others. But once we start to know more about it, then maybe it might fall back into this empirical idea.
Definitely. I mean, we're starting to see it come back around, which I'm so excited about. So, do you have any like words of advice for people of your generation that are curious about lucid dreaming and maybe they don't really see the point of it or they want to get into it?
I think first things first, it's going to be that anybody can lucid dream, and you will end up finding ways that it becomes useful to you, because there are so many different ways that you can utilize a lucid dream in your own life, whether it's in improving yourself or working on your relations with others, or like practicing your own mental stimulation, or just looking at the pleasance of nature, solving problems. It doesn't matter. You're going to find a way that lucid dreaming is useful to you. And if you don't know what it is yet, it never hurts to try.
That's true. Very true. I love that because there's so many things you can do with it. Whatever you're going through in life, your dreams can help you through that. And I've started to fall in love with all of my dreams, not just lucid dreams. I also wanted to ask you, is your family like supportive of your lucid dreams? Do you talk to them about it, or what's their like reaction to this interest of yours?
It's super interesting because I would say that they're open to this type of field just as much as I am. Just not in the same way. They don't have the same knowledge on it necessarily, but whenever I bring up a topic like that, they're always willing to listen because it's something, once again, that is pretty mysterious, but at the same time, it is charged with so much potential. And the fact is, if we're able to dream about something and it has some form of implication to our lives, maybe it might hold something more magical than just it's the dream state. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, my family is pretty welcome to the idea of lucid dreaming, and they definitely know that it's something that is full of potential. But when it comes to practicing it, I'm not sure they necessarily have the full-on motivation to start a lucid dreaming practice. But besides that, they're definitely accepting to it.
Well, that's good. I mean, they definitely know that they can come to you if they want to talk about their dreams or if they ever experience a lucid dream. So it's good that you've established that language and communication with them.
You mentioned the fact that inside our dreams, I mean, sometimes we have trouble talking about it with other people, and that's because dreams, I mean, they can get pretty absurd, especially if they're not lucid, just things that would never make any sense in your waking life, since your prefrontal cortex basically isn't active. Your sense of identity as well as your sense of logic of what's around you, that doesn't really make sense. And starting to tell it to people in real life, it can be a pretty weird experience. But I think over time, if we can normalize that idea of talking about our dreams and teaching each other what potential there is in it, maybe we might be able to get to a point where, I mean, dreams already are something that we all have, but to really declare it and put it out there.
So at this point in your life, you've been practicing for a few years now. What's your frequency of lucid dreams?
It stems all the way from nightly to once a week, depending on how stressed I am, because obviously I do need to practice it in order for it to occur. So there is a lot of variety as to when I have them, but the best is usually nightly.
Wow, that's really good. So do you have like dream tasks in always in the back of your mind, or do you just kind of wing it when you get lucid?
I actually do note them down. So I have a list of each of those things that I'd like to achieve or I'd like to do in the next lucid dream to make sure that I'm exercising the best of potential that I get into it. But it's a lucid dream. That there are also points where you enter the dream and you forget what is on that list, right? Because you can't carry anything with you from the real world into that dream. So then there are points where I just play it by ear and experiment a little bit with the dream world and think about what it could really be used for in this specific time.
And how often do you have nightmares and how often are they lucid? And what do you do if you're in like a scary lucid situation?
The funny thing is, for nightmares, sometimes it can become so absurd that it ends up being a dream sign for me. So I often turn eventually from nightmares to lucid dreams, and I'm able to eliminate it by using a persistent realm. Sometimes a lot of people, especially in lucid dreaming, like to talk about the fact that there is a consistent world or realm that they go back to. And by utilizing that, superimposing that on top of that negative experience that I'm having, most of the time I'm able to take it out and focus back onto the idea that this is only a dream. I am now back in a safe environment, one that I am familiar with already.
That's nice. So you have a persistent realm that you can go to that did you create it and you can go back to it at will?
Yes.
Nice. And how did you create that? What does it look like?
It came from originally I made a quote, and this quote is actually in my bio about perfection is the natural state and life is triumphant. Like I made that and I discovered that maybe this natural state could be used as a place of rest, could be used as a place of home in that dream. So as soon as I thought of that idea, when I closed my eyes and I opened them, I really visualized that characterization of nature. It's going to be really, really tricky to describe. But when I look around that dream, I can really see what nature would be like in its most fundamental state.
So, what about dream characters? Have you had any interesting encounters with dream characters that you can share?
I'm trying to think. Most of the time when this happens, they aren't actually human characters. I've looked a lot into this idea of embodiment, or being able to put yourself in the shoes of another creature, right? We always talk about the fact that what if you could have the abilities of a dog or a fox or a whale or whatever it could be. I think once you enter that type of world, at least the way that my mind creates it, you're able to look through that type of lens and see those characters as if you are that creature or animal or whatever it is.
Sometimes I'll like shapeshift in my lucid dream and be different creatures or different people. And always think that's an interesting experience. Another thing that science cannot prove empirically yet is the concept of shared dreaming. What do you think about that in your own personal opinion? No need to make any scientific claims or anything, but do you think it's possible that our dream space is more than just in our minds and that maybe we can share this space with other humans or maybe even other interdimensional entities?
I know I've heard of many, many stories of different families or friends or people having this idea of shared dreams, the fact that they've dreamt of something and it's the same thing in each of those specific dreams. And if you were to approach it from a scientific perspective, the first hypothesis I would come up with is the fact that two people living in the same household or who've had similar experiences may process that information in the same way, such that it results in a dream that is similar, but I still feel like there is something more to it than first meets the eye. And it always goes back down to the question of also, why do we dream? Why is this a thing that every single human does? And beyond that, of course, why we sleep. But there's a whole book by Matthew Walker that you can read if you'd like to get into that too.
I definitely believe it's true. And that's one of my interests when I start getting into my research is to induce shared dreams and be able to replicate them. And if you have a couple lucid dreamers that are advanced, experienced lucid dreamers, and you have them induce lucid dreams consistently with the task of finding a certain target within the dream space, I mean, that could prove some interesting evidence if they're able to confirm whatever it is they're trying to confirm without having any prior knowledge, share a dream with each other, exchange information, and then wake up and confirm that that information is true and do it multiple times. I mean, that's a pretty good setup for an experiment that might have some validity. So hopefully I'll be able to do that someday.
It is all a wish of ours to be able to share a dream with somebody else. The same way we look at games, maybe, and there's like a multiplayer version of that game. If we could do that inside a dream, it would be the most powerful thing because now you're not the only person in that dream playing God. It might be a little bit different as to how each person can adapt to their own environment, but that is a world that is full of incredible speculation and possibility.
Yeah, I love the video game comparison. I use that all the time because lucid dreams feel like a fully immersive VR game with full sensations. And I think that's quite a fascinating analogy, honestly.
I really wonder when we're going to reach the point where our true VR games or games in real life are going to be able to wire directly to our brains with all of those sensors. But for now, there's been a lot of people who have told me they wish they could do this thing in real life or they wish they could experience this one thing. And I always, always direct them to lucid dreaming because it seems like something that is not possible. But I tell them in the dream, you are the person who makes it possible. You make it real, just like the Matrix, actually.
And that's a good metaphor for life, really. If you can dream it, you can do it, which is true because all the things I've always wanted to do that I physically can't at the moment, such as traveling to Egypt to see the pyramids, I've done that in my dreams. And sure, it's not the same thing as going in physical waking reality, but I felt pretty happy about it. I felt like I was there. So, yeah, all the things you want to do, I've been like snowboarding in the Himalayas in my dreams, like all these cool things that I feel like I've had these experiences in my memory bank, and I cherish those dream memories forever.
It is. Dream memories are fascinating, and you can build them up really slowly. And once you remember them, the fact that it is a full-on experience, and the fact that whatever sense you're perceiving around you, you can control. So if you're getting really, really cold, you can either you force it through your mindset and take away that feeling, or you could also do it in a way that your mind can completely understand. Like you just make a jacket appear or something, and suddenly you're not in that same environment. There's different scales of the way that you can perceive those, but I've often enjoyed toying with the idea of, are you really lucid at a fundamental level, such that you need to use real objects and real conceptual ideas around you to control them? Or are you super lucid in a way that you know so much that it is a dream, you can control any aspect of it at will without the bridge of that concept?
And what about your non-lucid dreams? Do you keep a dream journal every day? What's your regular dream recall like?
I don't often journal simply because, I mean, there's timing and everything. I'm going to be starting school soon, and it can often be very difficult if it's just about to start. I need to wake up and I need to get right into it. But as it comes to remembering them, I usually remember a dream at least every night. The big thing for me is always going to be when I first explored that idea of potential, I never knew what I was really in for. So if you're new to lucid dreaming, or if you've just come right into it, or maybe you've already started a practice but you haven't been successful yet, just know that once you're there, it's a world of incredible potential and anyone can lucid dream.
That's true. I love that. Thank you so much, Brandon. It's been honestly so fascinating talking to you. And I'm so excited that we are on this LDI journey together, and just in general that we've met in the community. And I'm excited to see where the journey takes us.